Welcome to the Q&A with the Noble 24th. We have with us today another officer of the line, but today we have Captain Glenn Lunde, one of the first men to join the 24th from its foundation. Thanks for being here and doing this with us.
Oh, you're welcome, Grant. Happy to be part of it.
Okay, so we're going to get right into the questions. Out of all of the hobbies, what drew you to reenacting?
Well, it's an interesting question. I guess I would say that I've always been interested in reenacting. I've known about it. I've seen reenactments. I knew when I was younger. There's a kid who lived next door to me. He's a few years older than me, who was a reenactor. This was like in the 1970s. So I don't know. Yeah, he was, 16 or 17. And he did Revolutionary War reenacting, and I always thought it was kind of cool. So just kind of always thought it would be something that would be interesting to do. I've always liked history, military history in particular. So I guess it was just always something that I just found interesting. I do have other hobbies, and I've done other hobbies, and I enjoy them as well. So I guess this is just one of a few things that I enjoy doing, but it just probably the best answer I can give you is I just always felt that it was something that I wanted to try to do. It just really always appealed to me. And like I said, I knew when I was younger, I knew a few guys who were reenactors, and I was a little too young to do it at the time, but it was kind of something that I, put away in the back of my head, said, yeah, I'd like to try this someday. The opportunity arose a little bit later in life, but it's been great.
Okay. Well, now, there are a lot of time periods that I know that you do for reenacting. You do World War I. You, I think, have dabbled in World War II. I think a little bit,
A little bit,
recall.
yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
But what is it specifically about the War of American Independence, American Revolution, colonial America that makes you that's kept you sticking around with it since '95?
Well, I think it is a very interesting time period in the history of the United States, Britain, Europe, the world. There was a lot going on in the 18th century, not just this, in particularly War of American Independence. There was many other things. The Enlightenment was going on. There was great leaps forward in philosophical and scientific thought. It was a lot of change, a lot of positive changes were going on in the world. As I said a little bit earlier, I'd had exposure to this time period, and in fact, at this time period in the mid-70s, when my neighbor was a reenactor, I actually, growing up in New York City, in Staten Island, and specifically, I worked or volunteered at a place called the Richmond Town Restoration, which is now part of the New York City Park System. But it was similar to like Sturbridge Village, Williamsburg, that sort of thing. It was a restoration of, specifically Staten Island, New York City life from the very early days of the 17th century up through the mid-19th century. But at the time, this was 1976, everything was focused upon the bicentennial and the colonial era in the 18th century. So I worked as the printer's apprentice, which was actually kind of a cool thing to do. It was a little farby, my mom made me this, a pseudo 18th century shirt. We kind of wore that over our jeans and things, but anyway, most people didn't care. So that really got me interested in this time period. So it was always something that I had an interest in. And again, obviously, from a military perspective, New York City during the War of Independence remained under British occupation through pretty much the entire war. And in fact, in Staten Island, where I grew up, that was kind of the main, where most of the troops were headquartered. And some of the earliest battles of the war took place in and around, within New York City and around New York City, in New Jersey, Westchester, obviously in Brooklyn. And so I got exposed to that very early. And then, as an adult, I moved here to the Saratoga area. And I think just that interest in the 18th century continued, being, that I live, a 20-minute ride from the Saratoga battlefield. So, despite, certainly I have an interest in other time periods, and I've enjoyed those as well. And I've been a great war reenactor for, about 15 years now. I greatly enjoy that. That's certainly has some similar aspects from the world history and social change going on. But 18th century, I think, is what really got me started in reenacting. And I still feel that it's where my main reenacting focus, I guess you'd say, for lack of a better term.
Okay. And now, would you consider this to be a hobby, or do you consider it more of a lifestyle?
Well, that's also a very interesting question. I think that can be different to everybody. For me specifically, I say it's a hobby. I think it's a fun and enjoyable hobby. I do have other hobbies that I enjoy as well. I enjoy, playing golf for one. But it's a hobby. And I think it's, kind of best, in my opinion, to view it that way. I think you got to balance these things out.
Okay. And now, what was it about the 24th that originally drew you to it?
Your father's flyer at the Saratoga battlefield. That's a little bit of a facetious answer, but that is how I learned about it. It was, as I mentioned earlier, I had really had an interest in becoming a reenactor for many years. Going to school and college, and younger years, I was doing other things and got married, had children, jobs and all that. But then a little bit later on, I started thinking about it again, and specifically what got me thinking about it was, I'd say, was the Ken Burns Civil War documentary. And it kind of piqued my interest. I said, "Oh, I'd been interested in doing that," but I wasn't quite sure that I wanted to become a Civil War reenactor. I did. There was an event in Saratoga. First, I think it was a Victorian stroll event years back in the early '90s in Saratoga that I went to, and there were some Civil War reenactors there, and they seemed kind of standoffish and that sort of thing. And I don't know if I want to hang out with those guys. So I just kind of didn't do anything. And but I would often go visit the Saratoga battlefield since it was so close, and enjoyed going there. And kind of renewed my interest in the 18th century. So I just started again picking up and reading some things. Started watching the Sharp series and things like that. And I would just happen to, I was just started really getting interested in doing it. So I was at the Saratoga battlefield one day, and there were actually two flyers there. One was for a Continental artillery, which I saw first. I was like, oh, it'd be kind of interesting. So I was looking at that, and then just adjacent to that, or close by, was the flyer for the 24th, and it said that, His Majesty's 24th Century of Foot, Regiment of Foot, and it just kind of struck me as like, this would be cool. It's a little bit different, but you know what? I've been reading a bit about this and was learning more about the British side of things, and having been the neighbor that I mentioned earlier, who was a reenactor, actually was a loyalist, and there was a long streak of loyalist sympathies in Staten Island where I grew up, probably because there were 30,000 British troops there. That could be why. So it just kind of struck me when I saw the flyer. I said, yeah, this sounds actually pretty cool. So called up your father, and he was like very enthusiastic and said, well, why don't you come meet me, because I already have stuff to give you. I got this, that, and the other thing. I was like, oh, well, that's kind of fast, but anyway, so I did, and obviously we hit it off pretty well, and the rest is history, I guess you'd say. Many years later.
So, you've talked about like why you've gotten into it. You've talked about like, what is it? But what is like the most enjoyable thing about this hobby that you think it is?
There's a lot. There's definitely a lot. But I guess I'd have to say, definitely the camaraderie. It's very enjoyable. I mean, I've met a lot of good friends in the hobby, and certainly just enjoy spending time with them and hanging out with them and doing things with them. I mean, that's definitely a big plus. I think another thing that I like about it is when we do not necessarily non-military events, but non-tactical events, when we go out just to do interpretive events at various different places that we've done over the years, and you have an opportunity to talk with the public and, I guess educate them a bit. And when they come away with a positive experience and say, wow, I didn't realize that before, or that's something new, or boy, this was really interesting, I appreciate you talking to me. I like that. That's really satisfying, and that's something that I really enjoy. Because like going back to like that first early encounter I mentioned with this Civil War group at the Victorian Stroll, they didn't really seem to be interested in talking to me. So, I was like, well, screw you people, so I always try to make an effort to talk to people as much as I can. So, I mean, those are a couple of things I've always enjoyed about the hobby. Which,
Now
it's surprising saying, I'm not that much into I enjoy, the tacticals and putting on the battles and all, but that's just part of it.
Mhm.
And that's probably not the favorite part anymore, getting a little older, and it's I don't want to run around in August in
Right.
wool. If I can sit, if I don't have to do that as much, that's okay.
No, but let's talk about that. Like the other side of it. Like, what's the thing about reenacting that you hate? You just really don't like it, and it's just kind of a drag to do.
What I would say is, I don't know that there's a specific thing that I hate about it, or really is a drag to do. Obviously sometimes, all caring for all the gear and hauling all the stuff around sometimes gets to be a chore. But the one thing that it kind of bugs me a little bit about it is, and I'm sure when people see this, I'll get all sorts of hate mail, but sometimes the what they call the quote progressive element within the hobby can get a little holier than thou, and that's kind of a turnoff. Sometimes they feel that they're more pure than others. It's not all of them. I think it's certainly a very small percentage, but there's a few out there that again, I think kind of always rubs me the wrong way for some of the reasons I've said, is that we are here to do it for ourselves, but it's also important to project a positive image of reenactors and a positive image of the history. I say positive image, maybe that's not the right word, but project it in a truthful and manner in which people can learn from it. So when you have other reenactors, essentially what's the word I'm looking for? Deriding other reenactors for maybe not knowing as much as yet, or not having the most up-to-date research, or maybe they their kit isn't quite as authentic as yours. Deriding them isn't the answer. Working with them and engaging with them and saying, hey, let me help you. That's always kind of bugged me a little bit. I think we're all in this together, and we should help each other and not, make fun of them or deride them or, blast obnoxious photos of them on your dark web type of things or something or other like that. So that's the one thing that kind of bugs me about it. And I guess that's human nature, probably. I get bugged about people throwing their cigar butts on the golf course. So, I guess maybe that's for what it's worth. But, that's something I think hopefully, maybe after the pandemic is over and we get to see each other again, maybe we can, have a different attitude towards that.
But, let's step away from kind of the negative elements of the hobby. Let's go back to something positive. What is probably, if not a singular event, maybe like a yearly annual event that you would say is your favorite?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. I remember, I've been thinking about that one when you sent me the questions. I'd have to say of like all time, there were a couple events that are very memorable and obviously was the 225th anniversary of Saratoga, which our group sponsored, and it was just a phenomenal event. We had thousands of reenactors from across the globe. It was a lot of work to put that on. It was a few years in the making, but it was such a success that certainly made it worthwhile. And just as an overall event, it was pretty amazing. Just looking at the amount of reenactors that were on the field, and just the feel of the whole thing. It was pretty intense and definitely something that I don't know is being recreated much in my reenacting career. A few times, but not quite to that extent. I think that's probably definitely the apex of a reenacting experience for me. Another one, this is just kind of a one-off, was the event we did in Quebec City back, I think it was 2004 or 5. That was actually pretty cool, marching through the old walled city of Quebec. Even though it was pouring rain on us, it was still pretty exciting. And actually, recreating the battle on the Plains of Abraham. Yes, I know that was a different war, but it was still, from a history perspective, pretty exciting. So that was a pretty neat event. Looking at one that I enjoy every year, or fairly regularly. I generally actually enjoy going up to Fort Ticonderoga. I always have, obviously, because it's in our area. It's fairly close by. It's kind of local to us. We all know that fort didn't probably look like that, back in the 1750s to 1770s, but it's a great spot. I've always enjoyed it there, and I certainly think in the past 8 years or so, it's greatly improved with the folks that run the fort now. I've really enjoyed the experience there, so that's definitely one that I like. And I kind of like going to Sturbridge Village too. Maybe that one is, it's kind of small and kind of crowded, but we got a lot of good friends who go there. Sometimes the folks at Sturbridge Village who run it are a little bit of sticklers for their rules, and can be they can be a little tiring at times, but it's always just kind of a fun event because I think all of our friends are there, and we again, it's relatively close by. I think that's true. So that's just kind of one of those fun things that we do every couple of years.
Okay. Now, I don't know, we've had a particular person already do an interview with us, and if they don't notice the resemblance in the last name. Your wife is the famous and also perhaps infamous Mrs. Lunde. And
That's
as that,
true.
I think
She is really what? Who?
we definitely need your answer to what you think your favorite reenactment meal is.
Huh. That's a very difficult question. Because there really have been a lot of favorites.
Well, how about just like the first one that pops into your mind right now?
Typically I like it when Laura cooks like the big rib roast over the fire, like kind of like it just marinates and roasts there all day, because then we got like roast, because it's really good. It feels it's exactly what you need after a really long day of running around in the hot weather and whatnot, and you can get cool roast beef sandwiches the next day. So that's definitely one that I enjoy.
Okay. Now, as a final question, I think you answered a few of these while you were talking anyway. But
No,
the
that's all
last
right.
question I have is someone who's just getting into this hobby, who's just starting to be interested, who's just starting to do some research, who's just starting to look into units. What is your advice to them?
Well, I would certainly continue along that line. If you really are interested in doing this, have conversations with an organization. And there's many different groups out there that have different perspectives on things. So find the one that's best for you. I mean, it's a worthwhile hobby. So I would certainly say, if you are thinking of doing it, I would find a way to take the plunge. We've had a lot of fun over the years, been to a lot of interesting and cool places, and I want to take a step back in regards to your question about memorable reenactments. The other one that I I can't believe I actually forgot this one, but saying interesting places reminded me, going down to the Caribbean and St. Kitts. That was a trip. Let me literally and figuratively, being able to reenact in a UNESCO heritage site on a Caribbean island. That was something never to be forgotten, and I'm kicking myself for actually forgetting it. But so anyway, that was a detour back to an earlier question. But if you're thinking about getting into doing this, I would recommend it. It's been a great hobby. We've done a lot of things, been to a lot of cool places. Like I mentioned, we've been to Quebec City. We've been down to Williamsburg. We've been to Ballston. Been to the Caribbean. I mean, there's just so many interesting places that we've been to. We've met a lot of good friends. It's been very rewarding, and helps helps keep you kind of fit as well. You can probably avoid gym membership for a little bit. So I would definitely find a way to take the plunge. I know that there's certainly constraints from a time and money perspective, but that's why you want to maybe do a little research and find what group you think fits you best. And there's going to be an organization out there for everybody. And hopefully you consider the 24th, and more broadly, hopefully you consider the British Army, because remember, we speak English in this country. And we were part of the British Empire for 170 years. But certainly find what's right for you, and take a little time and make a few phone calls, do some web research, have Zoom calls, whatever it may be. But find who's right for you, and if you do that, I think you will have a really enjoyable hobby that can stay with you for the 25 plus years it has with me. I kind of lost count. But I don't think it's 30 yet, but it's getting close.
It's getting close, but not quite. But now, as a quick little bonus question, then there is a right answer to this. What is your favorite? What is your favorite color?
Well, of course, it's red.
It has been a common theme. Can't imagine why. Well, I do want to thank you once again, Captain, for doing this. I'm sure I'll say that one more time before I'm finished with this outro.
Right.
But I do want to remind people that are watching that we do have contact information available just below this video in the YouTube section here. We have a Facebook, we have a direct email link, we have a website, we have plenty of different opportunities to reach out to us, to get some research, to get some information, to think about joining the regiment maybe. I don't know, maybe why we're doing this or not. But thank you once again, Captain Lunde, for doing this quick little interview, and we will see you on the fields.
All right. Well, thanks again, Grant. And, we definitely will see you out on the field.